Let's now talk to the discrimination lawyer, Robin Moira White, because, Robin, this change to the Equality Act, some people are saying this is just clarification, others are saying this would legalise a form of discrimination.
It clearly would. It excludes trans people from spaces which we've properly used for a quarter of a century, and it's solving a non-existent problem.
Is that so? I mean, the Labour Party says, yes, that the Equality Act already has a clear definition of sex, but many others who have looked into this have found that actually it's rather vague. Do you think it's possible to both protect biological sex and also those who've gone through gender reassignment in an act like this? Because it all does seem rather confused, and I think there have been court cases where it's all been a bit wishy-washy.
Well, we have exactly that protection at the moment. So in sports, for example, if you can show that a trans person has an unfair advantage, or it's unsafe to have a trans person playing with non-trans members of the gender in which they identify, then you can exclude the trans person if you've good reason for doing it. Now, is there really good reason for doing it when I go to Sainsbury's on a Saturday and go and use the loo? Is that what we want to achieve? The evidence from bathroom bills in the US is that it wasn't the tiny number of trans people who get affected by such things. There are broadly about 40 times as many butch lesbians in society as there are trans people.
What have butch lesbians got to do with this?
Because
they're biological women. They're biological women.
They're the people who got challenged under the bathroom bills. They were the people who were being pulled out by security guards and accused of being in the wrong place.
Yes, but then they'd have a very strong case, wouldn't they, to say, actually, I am a woman, a biological woman.
Yeah, but they'd had to be exposed to that harassment and disadvantage. It wasn't the trans people who were having a problem.
I guess my question is, do biological women have a right to female-only spaces? You're saying...
Yes, they do.
Well, it has...
Yes, they do. In particular circumstances where there is a justifiable need, service provider can decide to provide the service in that way, exactly as J.K. Rowling's preferred rate counselling service, Beera's Place in Edinburgh does. Then they're able to justify that difference and they can provide a service in that way under the existing legislation.
So you think there's no need at all to clarify that sex in the Equality Act means biological sex?
We live in a complex society. We can simplify society. We could take away voting rights for people generally and go back to rotten boroughs, and that would simplify elections tremendously. But we don't do that. We recognise that people have rights across society, and our laws reflect the complexity of society.
What do you say to the case that this is simply returning a situation to a lack of government interference? And it's very unlikely that there will be many businesses that decide to turn away customers, and leaving it to being the choice of the individual businesses or services rather than the choice of the central government might not actually change all that much.
Well, would we be proposing to take away the protection for gay people or black people and leave it to business generally? No, of course not.
Well, I mean, it's a question. Some people might suggest that you don't need government to protect because society might be generous enough and the market might provide a sort of rational response whereby if you're turning away customers, you're not running a good business.
I'm sorry to say, 30 years of working as a discrimination barrister only convinces me that the protections that people have, that women have, that people of colour have, are essential in our society for protecting individual people.